Two organizational principles, kin versus contract, and why one cannot live without the other. There are two ways human beings organize themselves. One is built on kin, the other is built on contract. Everything else, politics, law, religion, and even morality, flows from that choice. It is one of the deepest fault lines in human history. These are not separate peoples so much as competing ways of organizing life that can exist within the same society. Kin civilizations are structured around families, bloodlines, inheritance, and long memory. A person is not merely an individual, but a link in a chain, accountable to ancestors and responsible for descendants. Status is not just achieved, it is inherited. Power persists because it is reproduced. Modern America as a contract civilization. Modern America is the most complete expression of contract organization yet built. Almost every major institution in American life is designed to treat human beings not as members of families, but as units of labor, consumption, and legal identity. You are not primarily a son or daughter, a bearer of a lineage, or a future ancestor. You are a taxpayer, an employee, a borrower, a voter, a client. From early childhood onward, the system trains people to think of themselves this way. Education is not an inheritance, it is a credential. Work is not a vocation, it's a contract. Marriage is not a civilizational duty, it is a personal arrangement. Children are not heirs, they are optional projects. Everything is portable, reversible, and negotiable. The same logic governs elite reproduction. To succeed in a contract civilization, you must delay everything that limits flexibility. You must postpone marriage, settling down, and definitely children. You must keep your options open, your resume clean, your geographic mobility intact. A large family becomes a liability, a spouse becomes a constraint, a rooted life becomes inefficient. This is why America's most credentialed and culturally dominant people are also its most childless. The Ivy League graduate who moves every 3 years for better opportunities is not broken. He is behaving exactly as the system requires. The female attorney who freezes her eggs at 35 is not selfish. She is optimizing within a world that treats fertility as an inconvenience. Contract civilizations do not tell people not to have children, they simply make it irrational. Housing is prized for dual-income professionals, not large families. Careers are structured around continuous availability. Health insurance, retirement, and status are tied to employment rather than kin. Every incentive points towards individual success now and family later, and later never comes. The result is not just fewer children, it is a systematic elite die-off. The most successful members of a contract civilization become the least reproductively successful. They pass on their ideas, their institutions, and their money, but not their blood. And because contract civilizations recruit talent from everywhere, they mask this extinction for a long time. Catholics, Jews, immigrants, and high-fertility outsiders were absorbed into elite institutions throughout the 20th century. Their children adopt the same mobility, the same careerism, the same secularism, and within 1 or 2 generations their fertility collapses as well. The contract machine consumes everyone who enters it. This is why modern America feels so powerful and so empty at the same time. Its institutions grow, its GDP rises, its universities and corporations dominate the world, but its future, the number of children being born to carry all of this forward, shrinks. But all of this freedom comes at a cost. When nothing is allowed to bind you permanently, not a hometown, not a spouse, not a lineage, you no longer belong meaningfully to anywhere or anyone. That rootlessness carries a severe psychological price, one that is now visible everywhere in modern society: anxiety, loneliness, identity crisis, and the constant search for meaning are not bugs in the contract civilization. They are what it produces when it severs people from ancestry, continuity, and obligation. A contract civilization can build almost anything, except a future. To understand how different this is from a kin civilization, it helps to look at what kin looks like when it scales. Feudal England and France as kin civilizations. Medieval England and France were not primitive tribal societies. They were highly organized kin civilizations operating at the scale of kingdoms. Political power was not abstract, it was genealogical. A king did not rule because he occupied an office. He ruled because he was the head of a house whose blood carried legitimacy. Lords did not own land in the modern sense. They held it as trustees for their descendants. Every estate was part of a lineage. Every title was a memory of who had held it before and who was meant to hold it next. Obligation ran up and down the social hierarchy like blood through veins. A vassal owed loyalty to his lord. A lord owed protection to his vassals. These were not mere contracts between individuals. They were inherited relationships between families. A son stepped into the duties of his father. A daughter carried alliance through marriage. Power was transmitted through birth. Marriage in this world was not a private affair. It was sacred because it was civilizational. When two families joined through marriage, land, obligation, and future children were bound together. A wedding was not just the union of two people, it was the fusion of two lineages. Divorce was rare not because people were happier, but because breaking a marriage meant shattering a web of inherited duties that extended far beyond the couple. This is why kin civilizations could survive chaos. A king could be killed, a castle could fall, a dynasty could be driven into exile, but as long as the family remained intact, brothers, cousins, heirs, alliances, the civilization still existed in living form. It could return, it could rebuild, and it could go feral and wait. This is what contract civilizations can never replicate. A modern institution has no children, a bureaucracy has no blood, and a corporation has no heirs. When a contract elite collapses, it does not scatter into the countryside and reconstitute itself through families. It simply vanishes, leaving behind records, endowments, and empty buildings. That is why societies organized primarily around kin produce feral aristocracies when times get tough, while contract civilizations produce extinction whether times are good or bad. Marriage was central to this order. Within a kin-based framework, marriage is sacred because it is civilizational. It binds houses, stabilizes inheritance, and ensures continuity. It is meant to endure because families are meant to endure. Divorce, when it exists at all, is rare and catastrophic because it shatters more than two individuals. It ruptures alliances and bloodlines. Children are not optional, they are the purpose. A medieval dynastic marriage aligned interests, preserved bloodlines, and stabilized inheritance. Even among peasants, marriage meant building a household that could survive. In a contract civilization, marriage becomes a private agreement between two autonomous individuals. When it stops being emotionally or economically satisfying, it can be dissolved like a business partnership. Fertility becomes a risk rather than a responsibility. Children, property, and identity are no longer anchored in lineage, but arbitrated by courts and paperwork. Many of the things our modern corporate society tells us are great threats, such as nepotism or a corrupt king. Society can and has survived for millennia. What our society may not be able to survive, though, is broken families and lineages. This difference is not cultural trivia. It determines whether a civilization shows up in the future. How contract civilizations actually rise. Contract civilizations do not arise because kin systems stop working. They arise when merchant logic defeats sacral and warrior logic. In a kin civilization, power is held by three intertwined orders: priests who sanctify authority, warriors who defend it, and families who inherit it. Merchants exist within this society, but they do not rule. A contract civilization begins when this balance breaks. As trade expands, finance grows, cities swell, and money becomes more powerful than land or lineage, the merchant caste accumulates wealth without inheriting obligation. Its power comes not from blood or duty, but from liquidity, contracts, and mobility. Merchant power is inherently anti-kin. It dislikes inheritance because inheritance locks wealth inside families. It dislikes marriage because marriage ties capital to lineage. It dislikes loyalty because loyalty interferes with profit. So merchants push for systems that convert blood into paper, land into money, and family into individuals. That is what contract civilization really is, the political triumph of market logic over lineage. Progressive ideology then arrives afterwards to moralize this shift. It tells people that contracts are more fair, that hierarchy is oppression, and that tradition is backward. But these are not causes, they are justifications. The real change is structural. When merchant and bureaucratic classes gain control over law, courts, and institutions, kin civilization is not replaced by something better. It is disarmed and hollowed out. Families lose control over land, marriage loses its sacred and civilizational meaning, inheritance weakens, children become optional. The elite that rises under this system is powerful, mobile, and rootless, and catastrophically infertile. It wins the world, and then it fails to pass itself on. The modern collision. Modern Western society is the most complete contract civilization ever built. It is legally sophisticated, institutionally dense, highly mobile, and catastrophically infertile. The 19th century elites who helped construct this system were eventually consumed by it. Successor groups that entered these institutions often began with stronger families, but within a generation or two they were shaped by the same incentives and experienced the same demographic contraction. This is a feature, not a bug, of civilizations that become contract-based. Contract civilizations ultimately select against their own continuity. Why this matters now. The story we were told is that modernity replaced tradition and that this was progress. The story now unfolding is that contract replaced kin, and in doing so destroyed the conditions that allow elites or any other productive class to reproduce themselves. That vacuum is being filled not by revolutionaries, but by families, religious communities, natalist subcultures, homeschooling networks, and rural and suburban clans. They are not just winning arguments, they are more importantly winning generations. That is why feral aristocracies are returning.